Welcome to MyLife Chassidus Applied, episode 506. This program is in loving memory of Miriam Bas Elio Altes Saleha Shalom and in merit of Baruch Binyamin ben Menucha Lana Altes, Yukasil ben Lei Rochel and Rochel Bas Liba Farkas, dedicated by Pinchas Todris ben Miriam and Sarah Bas Rochel Altes. So we are in the first of the 3 weeks, also known as Ben Hamtzorim, between the straits, the dire straits, Meitzar. Meitzar means constraints, distress, referring, of course, to the 3 weeks, the saddest period of the Jewish calendar, when we mourn and grieve over the destruction of both temples and other sad events that happened throughout history, as enumerated in the Mishnah in Tainus, the tractate called Masechta Tainus, the last chapter. And of course, its significance to us today is not just remembering events back then, but these all begin with the spiritual dire straits, so to speak. We say Metzorim, Meitzar, like Mitzrayim, Meitzar v'Gvul, referring to all forces that inhibit, constrain, limit, drive fear, insecurity into our lives. All the way beginning from the root of it all, the Tzimtzum Harishon, the Kabbalistic terminology of the Arizal, whose yahrzeit is actually in the 3 weeks and the 9 days on Rosh Chodesh, on 5th of Av. Rosh Chodesh Av is the yahrzeit of Aaron HaKohen. On the 5th of Av, but the doctrine called the Seid HaTzimtzum, the concealment, the initial cosmic concealment, the cosmic silence that God employed in order to create existence. So it's all rooted there. But that itself tells us there's a purpose in it. It's not an end in itself. Its purpose is to bring out an independent consciousness and bring out even more strength, because the power to conceal is even deeper than the power to reveal. So though on the surface level, this is indeed a sad time, and we do have limitations in how we celebrate, we don't make weddings, and other forms of unnecessary celebrations. Unnecessary, I mean to say, doesn't have to be in this period of time. So, to honor, obviously, the negative events that happened, but there's also understanding that it's all almanas, like we learned that all on condition to bring a greater revelation, and ultimately the revelation of Mashiach Tzidkenu, the final redemption. So the first thing it teaches us, how does this time period help us get through challenges? We see, what do the 3 weeks teach us today? How does this time period help us get through challenges? Well, exactly that. It teaches us that every challenge is an opportunity. And though we have to be sensitive and humble by any particular setback, especially events that are tragic, as unfortunately have happened throughout history and have happening now, but at the same time, it's not the end of the story. The end of the story is that there is going to be a deeper revelation, and we have to understand and ride these vicissitudes, ride these cycles, and navigate through them. So it helps us understanding that life is not a continuum. There's ups and downs and twists and turns. And even when things seem dark, know that the dark will lead to greater light. That's a critical message in life in general, to realize that the here and now is not what defines us. Yes, we have to experience what we experience. We have to realize that there's always a deeper story and a narrative that continues. And that indeed is the story of the Jewish people and the story of our history, that despite all the setbacks and despite all the challenges and despite the terrible losses, it always led to rebirth, like the rebirth of the moon, to a renewal with even greater power than we had before. So when we look around at events today in the world, on one hand, for the Jewish people, it's never been as good. The freedoms that we enjoy, ability to be Jewish, to celebrate our Judaism without anyone arresting us, without anyone prohibiting it, without the fear of death, the fear of arrest, and so on. At the same time, we have our challenges. Especially recently, we've seen what's going on in Israel just now. This latest attack on the Druze community in the Golan Heights, attack on Israel, bottom line. among the other attacks, and of course what's happening in the United States and other parts of the world. So we're not out of the woods yet. Mashiach is not here in the fullest sense of the word. But on the other hand, we have to remember all the great blessings. And we have to realize that we've been here before. And despite this darkness, we will get through it, but we have to do what needs to be done. To stand strong, to stand proud, and to stand confident that we will see it through. And of course, this includes fighting the battles that we need to fight against sworn enemies, and not in any way appeasing and not compromising, standing strong, but also with a firm belief that we are fighting for the cause, for God, for goodness, for virtue, and to teach that to the entire world without apologetics. So the time period also teaches us for each individual. Each of us goes through our own personal challenges. And we have the same issue at times where we feel sometimes lost, we feel fatalistic, we don't see where the hope is going to come from. So we have the expression trach gut wird sein gut, which is not just a euphemism, meaning that, okay, yes, a nice cliche, think good, it will be good, but it means that when you think good, when you think positive, you generate positive energy, which in turn changes the situation, reveals the deeper good, even in situations that may not seem so at the outset. And our attitude is a major factor in this, because attitude affects reality, as we've discussed many, many times. There's the famous story that I've shared many times of when the Tzemach Tzedek, the Alter Rebbe, was in the last hours of his life, was Chavdala Tevis, was Saturday night, passed away right after Havdalah, as it's written and documented. So and they were running away from Napoleon, from the war, the Franco-Russia war. So that Shabbos is already, the Tzemach Tzedek sensed that the end was close. And when he was davening Ma'ariv at leading the evening service, Friday, Shabbos night, before Shabbos was over, his voice, you could tell that the Tzemach Tzedek was very sad. After davening, the Alter Rebbe called him over and said to him, I heard from my Rebbe that Kamala upon him lamayel, that the way you show your face below, that's how the face is reflected from above. So when you smile below, the Eibishter smiles back at you. When you show a sour face, a sad face, God forbid, that's what comes from above. This may have been the last thing the Alter Rebbe said, B'chaim chayusei ba'al medain. And Tzemach Tzedek has a letter, there's two versions of this letter, where he documents it and explains it, how our thoughts and our attitudes actually change reality. It's a very fascinating letter. I've reviewed it a number of times, but very fitting, especially in a time like the 3 weeks, and especially with what's going on in the world today, where you can become very despondent and very down from what you see. So besides the fact that maybe we should lower our exposure to the media and to all the everyday everyone entertaining us, God forbid entertaining, but like becoming a type of voyeurism and every pundit commenting, maybe it's time to focus more on things that are more eternal, learning a little Chassidus, learning a little Nigla, learning something else in Torah. But in addition, even if you are exposed to some of these negative stories and negative attitudes, to keep in mind that there's a bigger picture here, and we must stay above water. We must keep our heads clear and know our eyes to heaven and eyes toward the destination, that we are marching toward a better world, Agula Amitis Vashlema. That's exactly what the 3 weeks are about. Stepping stone to that. As the Rebbe explains, based on the famous Maimer, Rab Hillel of Parich, the Rebbe says probably a Maimer based on the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, could be from the Tzemach Tzedek's Maimer, the Mitler Rebbe's Maimer, that he talks about the 3 weeks being like connected, for Pi Kabbalah, he explains that the 3 weeks are like a correspond to Chabad, Chochma Bina Das. Why? Because the 3 weeks is a time, and he gives the example of a teacher who withdraws from his student in order to reveal a deeper teaching. So the teacher loves his student so much, he wants to teach something completely new. To do so, he has to prepare himself. So he falls silent because he can't keep teaching what he was teaching before, because that was still the old teaching. He wants to teach something new. So from the student's point of view, he can misinterpret this silence as abandonment. But in truth, it's actually a concealment in order to bring even a greater revelation. As he continues to explain that revelation is followed after the 3 weeks, come the 7 weeks of comfort, Shiva de Nechemta, and then the 2 weeks of Tshuva. explained that length in the Maimon. We've again discussed it in previous years at this program, MyLife Chassidus Applied. And essentially the point being that not every silence is abandonment. That a silence is often, in this case, meant to be a stepping stone, a catalyst, a springboard to a far, far greater revelation. And that's how we have to see it. And that's why the Rebbe emphasizes that in these 3 weeks we have to do whatever we can halachically to add in simcha in the ways that we can do so according to halacha, which means Pekudei Hashem Yesharim Mesamchei through learning Torah and performing mitzvahs, especially mitzvahs that are connected to joy, like in the 9 days, making siyumim, and the 3 weeks in general to learn the laws of Hilchos Beis HaBechira, the laws of the building of the Beis HaMikdash, in the Rambam, as well as in Masechta Midas, Talmud Midas in Shas, and the Psukim in Yecheskel that talk about the measurements of the third temple. Tziyim b'mishpat tipada v'shaveh b'tzdaka, as we say in the Haftarah before Tisha B'Av, that Zion will be redeemed through tzedakah, through mishpat, through Torah, halacha, mishnayos, and tzedakah, tziyim b'mishpat tipada v'shaveh, and its captives through tzedakah, additional charity, and in general an increase in Ahavas Yisrael and Achdus Yisrael, which counters the baseless hatred for which the second temple was destroyed. And that's how we reveal the deeper revelation in this silence of the 3 weeks. So the Stalkus Chabad to Atik, in order to reveal from Atik into Chabad, into Zoh, into the Midas, and ultimately into our lives, this deeper revelation with the ultimate Geula Amitis V'Ashlema. Can we connect the latest tragic rocket attack killing 12 children and teens to this time of year? So we see what just happened, unfortunately, tragically. Hezbollah is being accused of it, Israel says. They're denying it, but it come from that direction, let's put it this way. And attacked, and yes, children and teens. It's true Druze, but it doesn't, Druze, a community. But the fact of the matter is, you see from this that they're attacking Israel, and attacking good Jews, you attack other people as well. So whether there'll be an outrage over this, we'll see. But the bottom line is, it happened now in these 3 weeks. So someone's asking, is it connected to this time of year? Well, we know there's an expression, Magalgal Schus L'Yem Zakai, that we try to associate, that events of merit happen in times of merit. And fortunately, the other way as well, there are times when there is a more darker time, and it's more conducive, not must, but more conducive. So that's why we avoid certain things in the 3 weeks, in the 9 days. But I don't want to be the one that says such a thing, because we don't have the right to be able to say that certain things happen because of this time. The fact of the matter is, October 7th happened actually on Simchat Torah, Shmini Atzeres, in Eretz Yisrael. So time is not always going to indicate what's going to happen that day. But at the same time, we can't ignore the fact that it happened in 3 weeks. So this only teaches us yet again that every tragedy is meant to bring to a greater experience, a greater revelation. And this means to strengthen our faith and strengthen our connection, and realize that even when things are happening, like I said, in the 3 weeks, even those 5 tragic events that happened on the 17th of Tammuz, and the same thing on the 9th of Av, that's ultimately that these days should be transformed. Not just eliminated, transformed. So every negative event has to be transformed. This is not a justification, it's not an explanation. We'd rather not have any deaths and any loss of any innocent people. But if it does happen, what we have to do is strengthen our faith, strengthen our commitment, and the more hatred we see coming, the more love we have to show to each other and to all people that deserve it in this world. Obviously, we have to also do whatever is necessary to protect the innocent, including defending them and preempting it, and the right action so it should not happen again. Okay. In that spirit, someone asked this question. Who is the destructive angel Ketev Meriri that is unleashed during the 3 weeks, and what can we do to protect ourselves from him? So there is this concept of Meriri. It comes from a Medrash Tehillim. On Tehillim, there's a posuk in Tehillim Tzadik Aleph that says, in the English translation, is from the pestilence that walks in darkness. So they explain, the Medrash says that this refers to a shed, a demon. Goes into details. That was created on Erev Shabbos, like the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, that these are not fully developed angels. And Rav Huna, in the name of Rabbi Yossi, reading now from the Medrash Tilim, says that this is a particular type of negative angel, negative energy, and it has no power either in the sun or in the shade, but that's why it's created Bein Hashmoshes, by sundown, because its power is between the sun and the shade, this type of twilight zone period. That's what it says there. And its power dominates in the 3 weeks from Shavos B'Tammuz to Tisha B'Av. Medrash Rabbah also brings it on the same pasuk, same idea, that regarding Beinam Tzodim, it's referring to this period in time where this energy, this Ketev Meriri energy is present. So there's a discussion, what does that mean? Because based on the Medrash, it sounds like we have to be careful, especially certain times of the day. Not to walk around alone, as the Medrash says. And there are different cheshbonos, different calculations. However, the Aruch HaShulchan points out that this prohibition applies only in a place where there are no people, but not in like in a forest and something similar where you're isolated, but not in a place where there are people. There's discussions around this as well. The bottom line is, we don't find in Chabad Minhagim necessarily a concern like this, but in general we know that 3 weeks is a time where we do lay low, so to speak, and certain things we don't do, because it's a negative energy time. And again, negative energy does not mean bad things happen. It means it's a conducive, it's a predisposition. Just like month of Adar, Marbin B'Simcha, we increase in joy. In the 9 days, we diminish in joy. Again, not joy al pi halacha that you're allowed to do and should do. So it's a time where we have to, so to speak, be more careful, which is normal in the kind of cycle of things, normal meaning in the time of Golus. So the bottom line is that the poskim in general are very careful with this, and some even say that it shouldn't necessarily be publicized, but since the question was asked, so just see it as part of the negative energy of the 3 weeks, but keep in mind the most important thing. There's no such thing as negative energy that's stronger than positive energy. Everything is meant to reveal something deeper. So even when we talk about that which is created Bein Hashmoshes during the twilight zone, is also ultimately meant to bring out even greater strength from us. Like the Tanya brings from Zehar, when he brings about the Malach, the Satan. So it says the Satan who instigates, like the animal soul, a person to do something wrong, that is L'Shem Shamayim. God set it up like the king's son. Because the mashal that the Zohar gives is of someone who comes to test and challenge the king's son to see if he'll be faithful to the king and to God. So it's only a test. And even that very angel doesn't want to do so. But he does it, that's the message, that's the mission. But he doesn't want you to listen to him. So even when we have these negative forces, we have to remember it's only a challenge in order to elicit from us even deeper resources and strengths to overcome any challenge, and then we become far stronger people. Okay. So how do we protect ourselves? Again, doing everything possible, learning about the Beis Hamikdash, learning about positive things, whatever we can do to increase in love and increase in unconditional love and in tzedakah and in mishpat, as we discussed earlier. Because that, besides countering any negative forces, actually reveals the good within even the negative. Someone asked, can we expect that the sadness of this period will be transformed to joy as the joy of Simchat Torah was transformed to tears on October 7th? In this year, everything seems to be upside down and reversed, and the normally happiest energy day of Simchat Torah was changed to a tragic sad day. Can we expect the sadness of the 3 weeks on Tisha B'Av to be changed to a joyous, happy time, or am I just a dreamer? No, it's good to be a dreamer. I remember a sikha that Rebbe spoke in the Mems about being a dreamer, dreaming about the Geula, a unique kechelmim. And indeed, as I was explaining till here, that's exactly the deeper pnimius. The entire concealment is in order to bring out a deeper revelation. What happened on Simchat Torah, that's God's mysteries. But there's no question that now we're owed one. And the that indeed these days will be transformed to Meidim, Tevim, and Simcha, and great holidays. It says in Medrash that the biggest moed will be Tisha B'Av when it's transformed. And you could say similar to Shivasa B'Tammuz, being that is the beginning of the 3 weeks. So that's exactly the attitude we should have. Another person asked this question. Can we ask Rabbi Jacobson to explain the Rebbe's Sikha where he says all the holidays, Shabbosim and Rosh Chodesh of the year get their source and energy from the 3 weeks, and how it's alluded to in the weekly parshas we always read during the 3 weeks? Thank you. Well, this is based on a Rishima in Eicha, where he talks about the 3 weeks. That's actually where the Rebbe brings in the footnote the Torah of the Vart and Torah of the Berditchever, the Yitzchak Berditchev, Shabbos Chazain. But he speaks there that the 3 weeks, the 3 Shabbosim times 7 is 21 days, because each Shabbos, because the Shabbos we're not supposed to mourn and grieve during the 3 weeks as well, because Shabbos is Einotzav Bo. So Shabbos, on the contrary, reveals the deeper meaning of the 3 weeks, which is a positive thing. Shabbos is supposed to be Einik Shabbos. We have to emphasize that, not to show that we are dafka not in any way mourning. So he explains there that the Shabbosim are the Mokkah, because we know Minei Mizbarchin Kuli Yemen, from Shabbos is blessed all the days of the week. So from Shabbos, we take energy for the rest of the days when we do show a state of mourning during the 3 weeks, that the deeper meaning is ultimately to bring to Yom Shekuli Shabbos U'Menucha L'Chai Elamim. I don't recall what you're saying that all year round we get that energy. It's very possible. It's a vague recollection. I have to look it up. If someone can find that sikha, please share it with me, and I'll share it in next week's program. But in the 3 weeks for sure, the Rebbe says, based on this, the Rebbe brings based on this Shima from the Tzemach Tzedek, that there is the energy, the pnimizdik, in other words, energy, the pnimizdik, positive energy of the 3 weeks is expressed through Shabbos, and from there it extends through all the 3 weeks, and perhaps through the entire year, like you're quoting. Yes. Okay. Since we're on this topic already, so one follow-up is about fear. We talk about fear, because seemingly when you talk about negative days, and especially we talked before about this angel, this negative angel, so you say to yourself that that's seemingly a time to be afraid. But as we discussed, it's not a time to be afraid. Hashem is always with us. All the time. And especially during these times. So based on that, let's go back to a question that was asked last week, talking about Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim. Someone asked the question about fear connected to trembling. So I explained that fear of Hashem, Yiras Hashem, is not a fear like a fear of a criminal, or a fear of the night, or fear of terror due to being afraid of being attacked, or something of that nature. Fear of God is one of awe and reverence. So someone follows up and asks like this. In episode 505, that's last week, you said that fear is not a fear of Hashem, is not like fear of trembling before a Nazi, Yimach Shemai. And rather, it's awe and reverence. My question is, there seems to be a place for fear of Hashem to be one of trembling, not just reverence. Charedim l'dvar Hashem seems to imply fear that is more like trembling. On Rosh Hashanah, we say Gilu Barada, which I believe I mentioned. The Gilu is like celebration, Barada, with shaking, with Barada, through trembling, meaning the joy is concealed within the reverence, which also seems to apply a fear like trembling. While I understand that it would be helpful to reassure someone who is traumatized, so to speak, by the idea of fear, and might not understand that fear also refers to reverence, etc. Is it 100% true to say Yiras Hashem is not fear, that is a trembling type of fear? Okay, so let's elaborate a bit more. When we're talking about the fear of trembling, where a person, let's say, is walking at night alone, and they feel someone's walking behind them, or you see a mugger or a thief, or you talk to a Nazi, that's a fear that grips us and paralyzes us. That is definitely a very negative type of fear. It's a fear of violence, a fear of death, a fear of destruction. We're talking about fear of Hashem, and that's why I don't like to use the word fear, because it right away elicits that type of fear. Even if you're to say there is an element of trembling, but it's a very different type of trembling. When you're going in to see the king, you've never seen him before. I remember when I went into Yechidus the first time that I was aware of. Yes, I did. I don't know if I physically trembled, but I definitely felt like I was trembling. But it wasn't trembling because I was afraid that I'm going to be attacked. It's a trembling that came from awe and reverence. So we say, Be'emo, Be'yira, Be'esses, Be'ziyah. Do 4 different types of, you can say, awe, reverence. So it does say Be'esses, it says Be'ziyah. So there's an element of trembling, but even that we have to distinguish from the trembling, as I said, from something negative. Here it's a trembling because you're about to enter the presence of greatness. You can feel embarrassed, you may feel shame, you may feel just, it's very uncomfortable. You're standing in the presence of the king himself. In that sense, it could lead to actual trembling, and I'm sure for some Yidden it does. But not because we're afraid, people afraid, like you mentioned, trauma. Afraid I'm going to be punished by him. Even though there's the concept of Yiras Ha'enish and Yiras Ha'ritzua, fear of punishment, and fear of being Ritzua, fear of the whip, or of the rod, however you translate it. But even that firstly is a very low level of Yira. It exists, a deterrent. You don't want to be punished by God. But when we're talking about trembling, especially on a higher level, we're talking about a trembling that's coming from awe and reverence, not from the fear of an enemy. God is never your enemy. That's the key thing to emphasize. So it could take on the manifestation of trembling, even physical trembling, because a person feels that type of awe and reverence, as I said. Okay. So regarding the 3 weeks, is there an element of that? Well, a person recognizes the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. And the Yerushalmi says, every generation that does not rebuild the Beis Hamikdash is as if it destroyed it. If it really affects you, like the Rebbe once said in the Fabrengen, and said, that means that right now, with the Beis Hamikdash is not built, means you are at fault. Let's not use the word fault, but you are responsible. Kera Welt heint, because the Beis Hamikdash is dependent on you. That leads to an element of trembling, taking this seriously. That's very different. And remember also the word from Tanya, that anything that leads you to demoralization is coming from a negative place, because it's not motivating you. If it's motivating you, then you know that is coming from the right place. Because the Yetzer Hara has many ways to paralyze us. And one of them is also to create a certain despondency and depression of fear and trembling that paralyzes you. That's not what we're talking about. If you're talking about awe and reverence that causes you to tremble, that elevates you and motivates you, then you know it's coming from Kedusha. Okay. So now let's move over to this week's Parsha. Person asked earlier the question that also during the 3 weeks, we read the Parshas, and Shalod says, he speaks about the connection of the Parshas to the 3 weeks, even though the 3 weeks happened except the story of the Meraglim, but in general it happened later. They built the destruction of the temple, but the Torah is Istaka Baraisa Bara Alma, Alpaim Shana Kod Torah Leil, and the Torah has in it, there's the blueprint of existence, so the Torah has hints to these 3 weeks and these Parshas as well, and indeed including lessons that we learn from it. So, what do we learn from Parshas Matos-Masei? So let's move over to that now. So generally speaking, Matos-Masei is the last 2 chapters in the book of Bamidbar, Numbers, Sefer HaPkudim, which actually Numbers fits to that well. Numbers is the counting, the 2 senses that we see in Parshas Bamidbar and Parshas Pinchas. And the last two chapters, indeed, the name of the chapters that Rebbe explains, on one hand, seem like two opposites. Matos, as opposed to Shevet, Matos is the name of the tribes are sometimes called Amata, or Matos plural, or Shevet or Shvatim. It also is two forms of a rod. A mata is a hard stick, like a cane, a dried out piece of wood. A shevet is more of a twig, more moist piece of wood, but still flexible and movable. So matas refers to strength, in a type of unwavering strength, unshakable strength. Masei, on the other hand, is movement. Ela Masei b'nei Yisrael, these are the journeys, it's traveling, movement. So the Rebbe explains that in general, these are two different tenuas, two different movements that we all need to have, two different approaches that we need to have to life. There are times you need to be firm and inflexible. Think of like the roots of a tree. Mata, strong, stand in one place. It's similar to Nitzavim Vayelech, interesting. Nitzav Melech, standing strong. Vayelech is movement, to go, to travel. And then there are times where we need the flexibility of movement. And you cannot have only one or the other. Think of the sun or the moon. The sun is consistent, constant. It goes through shift, but you don't really see them. The moon is all about cycles and all about change. Every day it changes. Every night it changes. So in life you need to have both. Halacha. Al tikra halacha. Halichis ela halachas. It says, halichis elam lei. So halacha, on one hand, you can't change halacha. Halacha this is chek v'le yaver. Chuka chakakti, gzeira gazakti, im b'chukesi telechu. This is the way we do it. Halacha says do it this way. You can't make shifts and changes. But halacha is also from the word halicha. As the Shalosh says, al tikra means it's an addition to. Because halacha has to also cause us to travel. Halacha also has to adapt. The same halachas have to be applied to different situations. So halacha is a form of movement and growth. Not changing, God forbid, the details of the halacha, but how it's applied and how it's experienced. Not just doing dry halacha mitzvah sanoshim elamoda with kavona, with intention. Im b'chukesai telechu. So it's b'chukesai, halacha, but it's telechu with halicha. So you need to combine both matos and masei. And the relevance to our time now is, on one hand, matos is a time of deep strength, a time when there's a storm, the time of the 3 weeks where there's a silence and where there's an unknown and there can be darkness. So it's a time to strengthen ourselves. We need mata to hold strong, be able to navigate through the difficult moments of the 3 weeks. At the same time, we have to know it's all about halicha, it's all about masei. It's taking us to another place. It's not an end in itself. Part of the journey is traveling through the 3 weeks in order to get to after Tisha B'Av, to Chamish Asar B'Av, and then to the month of Elul. All grows out of the month of Av and the 3 weeks. As we shall discuss when we get to the month of Av. The Av is the month of the Mazel Aryeh, Rosh Tevis, El Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, Heshana Rabbah, born out of Av, out of the Aryeh. Like the Medrash Yalkut Shmeni that Rebbe often cites, that this month of the lion was destroyed by the lion. The month of the lion is Av, destroyed by the lion of Nebuchadnezzar. What did he destroy? The lion, the Beis Hamikdash. Almanas, in order that the lion, Hashem, Arishag V'lo Yira, that the Eibishter will rebuild the Beis Aryeh, the Beis Hamikdash, in the month of Av, in the month of Aryeh. So from the negative is born the positive. Yehavchu, Yamamei L'Sasal L'Simcha L'Meidim Tev. So in that sense, Matos Masei captures both these messages and they come to join together. Now there's specific themes in each one of them, and I'll touch upon a few. Here's a good opportunity to tell you that since this program is already over almost 11 years, we're now already in episode 506. We recently celebrated the 500th anniversary, 500th as in 500th episode, I should say. So go to ChassidusApplied.com where you can submit your questions, and there you'll also find all the previous episodes, including, now we're talking about 10 years, of topics that address also the 3 weeks and these parshas. So I try to always add something new because those you can look at, they're all in the archives at chassidusapplied.com. So let's talk about a few new themes. When I say new, not new theme, but new things I haven't talked about in the past connected to this week's Parsha, or Parshiyos. So, person asks, are those that live comfortably outside of Israel like the tribes of Reuven, Gad, and half of Menashe? So we see in Parashat Matos, we see the story that they're preparing to go into Eretz Yisrael, which was, of course, the whole purpose to go to the Promised Land. But then come Reuven and Gad and half of Shevet Menashe and say to Moshe they want to stay on the other side of the River Jordan, or Mikneh Rav, because we have many cattle. And that was a very fertile ground. Moshe gets upset at them. What do you mean? All the Idna are going in, they're going to war. You can't separate yourself. So finally the agreement that they make, and Hashem agrees to it, that they will also fight in those battles. And they're granted that part. So someone's asking a question, applying it, are we like the tribes of Reuven, Gad, and half of Menashe that wanted to settle outside of Israel? Today we live comfortably in Crown Heights or in other communities around the world. Our biggest problem is alternate side parking, but our brothers in Israel are fighting a war to save their lives from the terrorists. When the tribes told Moshe Rabbeinu that they wanted to settle outside Israel, at first he was upset with them because he thought they were trying to avoid their responsibility to fight and conquer the land. But then they said they do want to fight alongside their brothers and they want to serve on the front lines, and Moshe agreed. So my question is, are we wrong for living comfortably outside of Israel and leaving the fighting to those living there? Or should it be our responsibility to go there and fight together with them until Hamas is defeated, and then we can come back to New York or wherever we are in the world? The answer is, and I've discussed this a number of times, we are all part of the war. It's exactly the lesson, wherever you're living. Exactly like Reuven and Gad and half of Menashe, we are part of it. We're one nation. The question is, what part of the war? Even those in Eretz Yisrael, first of all, there are people living comfortably there too. But even Eretz Yisrael, even those that partake in the war, they're not all doing the same thing. There are people on the front lines. There are people in communications, people in intelligence, people in administrative parts, people in the different departments of the military. Between the infantry, between the army, the navy, the air force. Everybody has their role, and we have to feel we are one. Some of us, our role is the spiritual part of the war. Just like Moshe and Yeshua. When Yeshua was fighting Amalek, Moshe was fighting the Ruchnis, praying to Hashem. Yoav and David HaMelech. So we have to feel like we're absolutely, urgently fighting a battle with them. And that's through our learning Torah, Hashkim v'Harev, v'hem kolim me'leihem, getting up earlier, but fighting Melchamta Shel Torah. The same thing with Torah and mitzvahs. Whether it's Daka or Mezuzah or Tefillin, encouraging others, Avis Yisrael and Achdus Yisrael, and especially during the 3 weeks. So absolutely the lesson is that we have to feel exactly like that. So whether you're living comfortably or not, the bottom line is we can't see ourselves as mechutz lamachne, outside of it. We are part of one nation. That's the bottom line. What can we learn from this parsha about taking booty from Gaza? In Parshas Matos, Moshe instructed children on the rules of taking booty after a war from Midian. He's talking there. Is there anything that we can apply to the current war in Gaza? Are we, according to Allah, allowed to get some booty and spoils from Gaza in order to compensate us for our losses caused by the Hamas terrorists? Interesting question. Well, from a halachic point of view, let's start with that we have to talk to competent rabbis to see if the halach is there of booty is applicable b'chlal b'zman hazeh in our time, or is it only in those wars where they were commanded? We're talking about purely halacha. From a point of view, psychological or laws of warfare, I mean, I don't know the laws of international law regarding warfare and taking booty, whether it's compensation or whatever other reasons. But remember also in Torah, we are compassionate people. We don't just take booty just to take booty. It's not about vengeance. Definitely not about hurting anyone. Defending ourselves, absolutely. So I think we have to be careful when it comes to this question of how to apply that. Because at the end of the day, and I'm not just talking about impressions to the outside world, I'm talking about also for our own ethical and moral standard. So that's a question that interesting to look into, and I don't know all the details of what the Israeli military's laws are and how they apply that to themselves when it comes to this. And we're talking about what we're supposed to do. I'm not talking about what people do that break the law or, God forbid, that are criminal. We're talking about what's appropriate. But al pitera, I think there's a lot of sensitivity when it comes to this. It's not just so simple. Midian was definitely a unique situation. Not in every place are you allowed to take booty. The Torah asks it in certain wars and certain nations. And there's also, as I said, the Torah is always Torah's chesed. It's not just about what we see our enemies have done, God forbid. Not just that we're not like them, we have our own rules and we answer to Hashem. So it's a very good question. I would definitely want to look more into it. I'm bringing it up because, as always, I see you as partners. Anyone that has any comments on this, maybe someone has written about it in some, a pilpul or in a journal, a Torah journal, the halachic attitude toward booty today, and especially in these cases that we're dealing with now. So that's a very good question, and thank you for that. Okay. In this Parshas, we also talk about Ori Miklat, Parshas Matos-Masei, Parshas Matos-Masei. What is the significance of the cities of refuge, the Ori Miklat? So we know the halacha simply is this, that if somebody inadvertently kills someone, b'shegig, so b'mezid, if to stand in the court of law, so even if someone who killed b'mezid runs to a city of refuge, he still has to stand in the court of law to determine whether it was inadvertent. But if it's inadvertent, the Torah says, bottom line is, like the Alter Rebbe explains in Ageres HaKedesh, and also brought in Rashi and different commentaries, why? Why a person who did something inadvertent, why should he have to go to a city of refuge? Why can the Goyal Hadam, meaning the family of a person, let's say someone was, God forbid, standing on a ladder, and by accident something slipped out of his hand and it killed, God forbid, someone down below. By accident. Everyone agrees it's an accident. Why should the family of the one that was murdered have the right to go and take vengeance? And the answer is because if something happened through Hashgacha Pratis, it means it came from somewhere. Not consciously, but the superconscious or the subconscious of the Nefesh HaBamis. And it's also mashma like this in the Gemara, as we'll talk about shortly. So therefore, they need to have some protection. So the Torah, in its compassion, it says 6 cities of refuge where you go to, and as long as you're in that city, within its vicinity, all the halachas around it, Masechta Makos, and the halachas, the Goyal Hadam, meaning the family of the person that was killed, cannot touch you. What is the significance of it in a deeper level? As I said, the significance is, number 2 things. It's a form of punishment for the person who did it. Even though he didn't do it advertently, he did it inadvertently, but as I said, it's a sign of something that came through his hands. It's like we say, Adamuad la'elam. A person is always responsible. So, but however, he's not responsible to the point where you can bring him to a court of law because he didn't do it with intention. So it's a form of a tikkun, the fact that he goes into refuge, into a city of refuge. It also protects him from the Goyal Hadam. So in Ruchnius, what it teaches us is how responsible we are. And when something happens, even if it was not intentional, you also have to do tshuva on it. The Rebbe brings Ari Miklat as one of the Rosh Tevis in the month of El. The month of El is like a Ir Miklat, in that sense. Or in the language of Chassidus, that even if it's Ara Hanelam, meaning it's not something that you are aware of, something inside you has allowed that to happen, and you were nichshel. So it means then you need to have a tikkun on a level that's deeper than what you're conscious of. So now comes the next question. So why does the exile of an inadvertent killer end with the death of the high priest, as the Pasuk says? That he stays in Miklat, in the city of refuge, until the Kohen Gadol passes away. And again, the Mishnah in Gemara in Makos talks about what is a Kohen Gadol and all the details involved. So there's different answers given. One of the answers that Rashi brings, because the Kohen Gadol, his whole Indian is to bring life to the world. The person who even inadvertently killed someone brought the opposite. So while the Kohen Gadol is alive, it's not befitting. A person who's bringing life to the world, a person who cut life off in the world, even if it was inadvertent, should be free to go roam about when the Kohen Gadol, who's bringing life to the world, is present and in control, so to speak. When he passes away, so to speak, there's a Yerida, so he's allowed to come out. Another explanation given, based on the Gemara, and the different Mefarshim bring this, is almost like an opposite explanation. The very fact that a person was able to commit an inadvertent crime is in some way the responsibility of the Kohen Gadol. Because he should have prayed. His role is to pray for the people. The fact that someone in his generation committed that crime is somewhat responsible for that. So as long as he's alive, the person remains in a city of refuge. Once he passes away, so in a sense now the Kohen Gadol, who is somewhat responsible, so that's what frees this person. There are other explanations given. The Meir Nevuchim talks about it, and other commentaries as well. The Meir Nevuchim says, just for the record, he says, because everybody's so busy with the mourning over the high priest, so the family that wants vengeance forgets about it. It also needs explanation. How do we understand that? Emotionally, psychologically. Okay. But in Ruchnius, what it means is that the Kohen Gadol, the leader, as long as he's there, he's responsible for his generation. Even for something you think it's not his fault. What does he have to do with the guy killing someone inadvertently? But somewhere he should have davened stronger. It's a tremendous lesson the Rebbe brings often about Talmud, Rabbi Ime. That when a student ends up in the city of refuge, you send his teacher with him, to learn with him, to be with him. Why? Why? Because the teacher in some way is responsible for his student, even in that situation, or maybe especially in that situation. So with that comes the next question. So why does the Mishnah say, why did the mothers of the high priest bring food to the exiles? It says that the mothers of the high priests of each generation would bring food to those that were living in exile in these cities of refuge. Or someone puts it this way. The Talmud in Makos 11a says something strange, that the residents in the Ir Miklat would pray It's the same place. The Mishnah says, it's taught that the mother of the Kohen Gadol would go to the cities of refuge and bring food and cook for everyone in order to make everyone like her and her family, so there would be less chance someone there would try and kill the Kohen Gadol, which if it happened, everyone in the city of refuge would be free to leave. But how does that make any sense? If someone purposely killed the Kohen Gadol, they might be free from the city of refuge, but they shouldn't really be free because they would immediately be arrested and put in jail awaiting trial for murder. So what's really going on here? Well, I have to, with all respect, correct you. If you looked in the Mishnah and the Gemara there, it doesn't say that there. Yitaka quoted the first half, that they cooked, but it says they cooked in order to elicit, and there's two opinions in Gemara, to elicit that the people living in the cities of refuge should not pray for the death of the Kohen Gadol. It doesn't say they would go kill him. There's another opinion that they should pray that he should live. Two opinions there, the Gemara says, which are not a contradiction. In other words, it was to make them feel better that they shouldn't pray, because that's what they would love to pray, that the Kohen Gadol should die, and then they could be freed. So the mothers went and supported them and helped build up their morale, helped feed them and so on, that they should be on the good side, so to speak. They shouldn't pray against the king, the Kohen Gadol passing away, and they should pray that the Kohen Gadol shouldn't. They should pray for him. That's what it says there. But the question is asked, why? How is it possible that their prayer could cause the high priest to die? The Gemara asked that question. On both situations. If it's going, it's just because they're going to curse him, that's a curse just for no reason. Doesn't affect someone. On the other hand, which would suggest that if the mothers did not appease them, so to speak, or make them feel better, that their prayer could actually affect. Why? Or the other way around. The Kohen Gadol is going to live because of their prayer. And that's what the Gemara answers, the same answer, the answer I mentioned before. Yes, because of Kohen Gadol, the fact that someone could kill someone inadvertently is ultimately somewhat the responsibility of the high priest, because he's the leader. Had he prayed for them, maybe better and stronger, they wouldn't have even committed that inadvertent crime. So you see that there's something going on here that's not just the person who did the inadvertent crime, even the leader of the generation, the Kohen Gadol. And that's why the mothers went to make them, appease them, to make them feel more comfortable, so they should not pray something negative, and on the contrary, they should pray that the Kohen Gadol should live. Their child, the child of these mothers. Which teaches you also about what the mother is. There are many lessons we can learn from that. So the other question someone asked is, can people successfully pray that someone should die? So the answer is yes, because the Kohen Gadol had some vulnerability, had some sense of he was somewhat responsible. But that someone else asked the question, if it's possible to pray, then kal v'chemer, we should be able to successfully pray that an evil person should die. So my question for Rabbi Jacobson is, based on this Talmud, should we be diligently praying that every terrorist and every supporter of terrorism should die in a huge plague so that peace can be restored? Well, if they're proven terrorists, absolutely, pray for it. I don't know if it's connected to the Kohen Gadol. It's a separate issue altogether. Absolutely. If we can get rid of them through prayer and we don't have to go to war and put ourselves at risk, that would be gavaldik. And may it be that way, that Hashem should listen to our prayers and finally end this whole darkness and free the hostages and let the soldiers come home, and Shalom al Yisrael for now and forever. With that said, since we're talking about the war there, someone asked the question, are the Houthi, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, the Houthi terrorists in Yemen associated with Hittites, Chittim, one of the 7 Canaanite nations that inhabited Israel before we conquered it? Is it possible their 33,000-year-old quarrel with us is the source of their hostile attacks against Israel today? I'm reading the question. I can't tell you. I don't even know if there's a connection between the Houthis and the Hittites and the Chittim. Not even sure if their name is really the same. Is it possible? Everything's possible. I'm sure there's some connection between the tribes from the past and today, even though Sanchev, Bilbil, Se'elam, and we don't know exactly whose traces, where their roots and lineage where. But regardless, we have enemies then and we have enemies today. And we have to deal with it accordingly. That's as much as I can say about this. Okay. Since we didn't finish all the questions of last week, there were a few more questions, so let me just read something connected to the presidential election. Is our current political turmoil a sign of Mashiach's coming? Did the Rebbe ever say that right before Mashiach comes there will be political turmoil and unrest? And did he make suggestions on what we should do to survive and thrive during that time? So the fact that we have political turmoil is very clear. I mean, look at this tumultuous presidential election. All these unexpected twists and turns. First of all, Trump and Biden in general. Then Biden's disastrous debate. Then the assassination attempt on Trump. Then Biden dropping out with all the pressures and all the discussions. And Kamala Harris now rising. So it's clearly tumultuous. Is it a sign? Well, from Chazal, it does say there will be signs, there will be unrest. And all unrest is usually a sign, like you say, Malchus Mizgarazu Bazu, which we also have in the Middle East, in Ukraine. We also have political Mizgaris Zubazu. The political rhetoric and venom, actually, that's being spewed. So it's all a sign, and hopefully we can translate it and transform it into the Geula Amitis Vashleima. Someone else asked, should we be afraid of Kamala Harris becoming president due to her support of anti-Israel voices? If you someone writes, rearranging the letters of her name, spell out one of our arch enemies. I don't know. I don't go to the places like that. You know, that already gets into areas which I don't think we have the right to go to. You know, Lev Lochem Sorim B'Yad Hashem, the Eibishter determines who will be the leaders. Her daughter, or maybe it's a stepdaughter from her husband, is one of those women that protests Israel and raises money for Gaza. Should this terrify us, or should we have faith because her husband is Jewish that he would convince Kamala to do the right, Kamala, to do the right thing and support Israel against Hamas. But on the other hand, her Jewish husband does not have a positive influence on their daughter. Or should we trust what the Rebbe always taught, that a Jew is a pintel yid, whose soul has a spark of holiness and always has a connection to Hashem, and ultimately will always come to do what Hashem wants. So maybe he will do the right thing. It's confusing. Please help shed some light on the situation. I don't know how much this has to do with her husband being Jewish or not. Our hope is this. We do not know the results of the elections. I'm not here going to endorse one or another. It is troubling, her support for the left side of the left wing, anti-Israel voices and forces. It is troubling, and I hope she either gets more clarity and realizes that. But God runs the show. So at the end of the day, I'm not afraid. I don't think we have to be afraid. Still vote your conscience based on what you see and what the facts are. That for sure. We have that right. That's what we not a right, an obligation. But I would not put fear into the picture. You know, some people argue, yes, that Trump, whether they like him or not, may be better for Israel than the other side, and it's very, very likely. But again, I've mentioned a number of times that the Rebbe generally did not support a president due to their support of Israel. It was usually due to their commitment to God, to commitment to the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Neach, commitment to the principles that this country, the United States, has been built upon. And I mean the divine principles. And that often is connected actually to their support of Israel, actually. Because morality is morality, as is obvious. So that's how I would approach it. Fear should not be our force, but we have to do what we have to do. Okay. We'll conclude. Someone writes a question, if I can comment, what are your thoughts on the recent losses of prominent Chabad leaders? Referring specifically to Rabbi Shmuel Butman, Alav Shalom, may his family be comforted. A little while earlier, Rabbi Moshe Kotlarsky. Someone writes, these are people who did tremendous contributions to Chabad organizations. They worked tirelessly to help us inspire, spreading the Rebbe's message that Mashiach is on the way. Should in any way this should be a setback? Should be upset and say the goalposts have moved further away and now it's too difficult to continue? My answer is no. It's sad when any Jew passes away, especially leaders. No question. But remember, we had Gimel Tammuz. And for every challenge, we're given strengths. And the Rebbe gave us strength 2,000%. So while our sadness and our hearts go out to any loss and to their families and to the organizations that they led and all the good things they did, we hope that we find people that can replace and do what they did and even with even more strength. But we have to continue to forge ahead. That's always our approach. And there's never a thing that we lost and say, no, the goalposts have moved. If anything, we're closer to Mashiach and Gula. So any challenge is essentially an opportunity for us to become more powerful and stronger in our commitment. And this again is the lesson from the 3 weeks. So we'll conclude where we began, that may we use this period in time as a catalyst when things are not comfortable, dire straits, from the straits we cry out, and ononi b'merchavka. The Eibishter responds, b'merchav ha'atzmich, as Chassidus says, expansiveness, and core essential expansiveness. May that be now. Torim Yikrov Ani Ena should already have the Geula before the 9 days, and even before even before tomorrow. The Geula Amitis Vashlem. This has been MyLife Chassidus Applied, episode 506. We're here every Sunday, 8 to 9 p.m. Kol Tuv. It should be a Freiliche.
This program is brought to you by MyLife Chassidus Applied. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at chassidusapply.com/donate.